Well, with so many crises shaking the Middle East, it's hard to decide which one actually to talk about. However, we can't get our eyes off of Syria because that is certainly a powder keg that could blow up totally in our face at any given time, actually. The United States has been bent on regime change there from almost the beginning. Of course, they hope to make Syria another one of the dominoes that would fall after Egypt. And then, of course, in addition to that, Libya and the other countries that have experienced the change of government as a result of the so-called Arab Spring. They thought that Syria would follow suit very quickly. However, it has not quite happened that way because Bashar Assad has proven to be a very hard nut to crack. Of course, Assad's father was the ruler of Syria for many, many years, and there was a time when his regime was threatened. He ended up killing 25,000 people in order to put down the rebellion against his regime. Well, now that his son Bashar Assad finds himself fighting for his political life and probably his literal life, and so far it's being reported that about 40,000 have died between government forces, between rebel forces, and whoever else is involved in this whole thing. Now, the bottom line is this. There's been a lot of input from outside. Hillary Clinton has called for the ouster of Assad. President Obama has called for the ouster of Assad. So we've taken very clear sides in this whole thing. They have said Assad must go. However, Russia and China have said not so fast. And rather than stand by as they did in Egypt, as they did in Libya, now all of a sudden they've decided to take a stand. And when the resolution was put before the UN Security Council, they saw the handwriting on the wall and they decided to exercise their veto power, which they, in fact, did, stopping the United Nations from approving a force going into Syria against Bashar Assad. Now, that's where we are right now. This has become a standoff between the United States and the Western powers against Russia, China, and the other powers that are pro-Assad forces. And that's the one reason that this particular conflict is so difficult, is because it has all of the potential of pulling the superpowers into confrontation. And even though the United States is known as the world's only superpower, yet Russia has just as many nuclear weapons as we have, and therefore cannot possibly be ignored. So that's where we find ourselves today. I want to bring you up to date on something that is brewing. Syria has accused the United States of seeking to frame Syria for using chemical weapons. The U.S. administration has consistently worked over the past year to launch a campaign of allegations on the possibility that Syria could use chemical weapons during the current crisis. The Foreign Ministry wrote in letters to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. What raises concerns about this news circulated by the media is our serious fear that some of the countries backing terrorism and terrorists might provide the armed terrorist groups with chemical weapons and claim that it was the Syrian government that used the weapons. Now, this has especially become a possibility now that the rebels have captured one of the main chemical weapon factories in Syria. I think there are about 5 of those. Well, the rebels within the last few days have captured one of those, the last news that I read. So now then Syria is saying, we suspect the United States is going to do to us what they did to Saddam Hussein, claiming that he had weapons of mass destruction. We, if we do have chemical weapons, do not intend to use them against our own people. Already the Syrian government said we will never use weapons against our own people, the chemical weapons. If an outside force invaded us, then that's another story. All bets are off at that point. U.S. officials have expressed deep concern regarding reports that Syrian military units may be preparing to use chemical weapons, with President Barack Obama calling the use of such weapons against the Syrian people a red line that could prompt American military intervention. We're just sitting there itching to go in. All we're looking for is an excuse. So Obama says if they use chemical weapons, that would prompt military intervention by the United States of America. Israel's so-called red line differs from that of the U.S., as it has said that any evidence of chemical weapons being passed from the regime of Bashar al-Assad to terrorist groups like Hezbollah could warrant military action. The United States and European allies are using defense contractors to train Syrian rebels on how to secure chemical weapon stockpiles. Now get this picture. These defense contractors, which are on the payroll of the United States of America, are in Turkey, and they are bringing these rebel forces over, training them how to fight where chemical weapons are involved, probably outfitting them with the necessary mask and all that goes with it. And so that's ongoing, and that's being done in Turkey. And then after they get them trained, they are shipping them into Syria to fight against the Syrian government there. So the external forces are very much involved in this. We just have not put our own forces on the ground, at least for the most part. We haven't. Now, the training which is taking place in Jordan and Turkey involves how to monitor and secure stockpiles and handle weapon sites and materials, according to the officials who spoke on condition of anonymity. Some of the contractors are in Syria working with the rebels to monitor some of the sites, one of the officials said, according to CNN. So there are actually contractors inside Syria working along with the rebel troops that are trying to bring down the government of Bashar Assad. So that's what we see here today as we're looking at what's going on in Syria. Now, this could blow at any moment. If Bashar Assad reaches the point where he believes he's going down, then you might as well take the whole house down with you if you're from the vantage point of Bashar Assad. Because if he were captured today, he would be standing before the International Criminal Court tomorrow, and you can be sure he would be found guilty, even though he claims that it's the rebels that have caused this whole problem. And, it was obviously a wave of coordination of some sort. I mean, this was not just a happening, whether it was in Tunisia or Egypt or Libya and now Syria. Was that just a happening? No, that was a coordinated event that occurred. It is part of the Arab Spring, and it was undoubtedly planned and funded by Western forces, the United States of America being the primary force that's been funding all of this. So this is really a U.S. effort to bring down the government of Bashar Assad without actually going in there with troops on the ground, which we would love to have done if it had not been for the veto by Russia and by China. So that's what we're watching taking place right now. But Bashar Assad is holding steady. Now, chemical weapons and biological weapons are no joke. Many times they've been called the poor man's nuclear weapon. So if you start using chemical, biological weapons, you are going to be seeing and hearing horror stories unprecedented. And that's the reason that this is such a critical issue. Now, there are several stories out today claiming that the West is using these fears of weapons of mass destruction as a pretext to move in against Bashar Assad. And Syria is putting out this word and is so fearful of it that they actually sent this letter to Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations. So they're doing everything within their power to let the world know, look, this is all trumped up. We are not using chemical weapons. We're not using biological weapons. This is all the United States trying to create a case against us. And if these weapons suddenly go off, what we're telling you is it's the rebels that have set these weapons off. And, of course, they say that the U.S. and the Western powers have access to these weapons and could actually supply the rebels with these weapons to then use them, blaming it on the Syrian government. That's exactly what they're saying today. So, when we deal with this, and now why talk about it? Why talk about it? Well, we can talk about everything going on in the world, whether you want to talk about the loss of privacy and the American government spying on the American people, whether you want to talk about what's going on in Iran right now and the little diagram that came out showing that they have been planning a nuclear bomb, or whatever you want to talk about, you can talk about today, and we can speculate about a million things. However, once we move from the pages of the news to the pages of the Bible, it's no longer speculation. We move from uncertainty to certainty, because what the prophecies of the Bible say, those things are going to come to pass. And the reason we're talking about Syria today is because your Bible and mine specifically declare, they don't suggest, they don't present probabilities, they declare that a war is soon to emanate from the Euphrates River area, which narrows it down to 4 countries. 4. Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran. All 4 of those countries are in this conflict. Turkey right now is training rebels to go in there and fight against Syria. Turkey has asked NATO to bring anti-missile defense systems down, and NATO's in the process of doing that, to install along her border, which she shares a long border, the southern border of Turkey, the northern border of Syria. They're going to be installing anti-missile defense systems there. Syria fears that that's a precursor to establishing a no-fly zone, because if they declare a no-fly zone against Syria, like they did against Muammar Gaddafi back in the Libyan conflict last year in 2011, if they do that and they all of a sudden have these very sophisticated anti-missile defense systems, then they can start taking down the planes of Bashar Assad, and Assad would not stand a chance against the superior firepower of NATO. Now, these are not things that may be happening. They're happening today. I mean, the anti-missile defense system is on its way to Turkey today, will be installed within a matter of days or at the most weeks. So this is going on now.